Hello, I'm Jessie Gray. Welcome to Personalities. We have a very interesting guest tonight. He's one of the foremost researchers in nucleic acid therapy and the prevention, or at least slowing down, of aging. He practices here in New York. His name is Dr. Benjamin Frank. He's the author of the recent book, Dr. Frank's No Aging Diet, which will be out in paperback in early next year. And in November, a new book coming out, Nucleic Acid Nutrition and Therapy. Thank you for coming, Dr. Frank.
Thank you, Jessie.
Very much. It's just a pleasure. For the people who might not have seen our last show together, you can actually slow down the aging process and then sometimes reverse it through nucleic acid therapy?
Yes, excuse me. I can slow it down definitely and reverse what the visible signs of it to a very significant degree. What I mean by that is I can take someone 80 and make them, at least physically, the face and strength also, return to 10, 15 or more years
Now you're
younger.
talking about the face cosmetically.
No,
they would look younger, or?
No. It's not merely a cosmetic effect. In other words, the cosmetic effect is obvious, but this is based on a deeper underlying effect on the aging of the cells in the body. One of the organs of the body is the skin. But the same sort of thing, I'm sure, is occurring in the heart, the lungs, and other tissues, only you don't see it. But what you do see is on the skin, and there it's clearly visible.
So that you can reverse the entire aging process.
I can reverse to a point, of course. I can't make an 80-year-old man look 25, but I can make him look maybe 60 or 65.
Can you extend his life?
I haven't patients that long on this therapy to really give you numbers like 10,000 people, how long I've extended their life. But I know I've done some studies with mice where the life's been extended, and there have been other studies, recent ones done, I think, with the rats in England. Someone did a study.
Using nucleic acid therapy?
Yes, very recently. This same sort of thing where the life was prolonged very much. So if what has been done with mice and with rats, and certainly is probably going to apply to humans.
I would think so. Some humans are rats anyway, so it would apply to them. You not only can reverse or slow down the aging process, but your nucleic acid therapy has a great effect in limiting the side effects of certain degenerative diseases.
Well, nucleic acids, what they do basically is aging, of course, in some aspects, a major aspect, is really the sum total of degenerations really going on within us. And I look on degenerative disease as really a part of a total degeneration that happens to be emphasized in one person, where it might be arthritis, and another it might be Parkinson's disease. In other words, because of different heredities that we inherit from our parents, we are weaker in one area than another. And given this weakness, diseases of degenerative variety like Parkinson's disease or like osteoarthritis, for example, come out in one person or another.
But it stems from the same cause.
The same basic cause. The irony of it all is that, you see, medicine today is treating disease in a very different way. They've been doing this for, last half century or century. It's allopathic medicine, basically, since Pasteur's time, really, in which they treat what amounts to symptoms.
Instead of the cause?
Instead of treating the more basic causes, yes, except in the case of, for example, infectious diseases, where you treat with penicillin, the bacteria can be looked on as the cause. But supposing someone's very weak and he's susceptible to that bacteria, let's say 100 times more than somebody else.
You aren't treating the weakness.
You aren't treating that weakness. So you're really not even treating the cause, even with antibiotics, except in extreme situations. So I would say that, no, allopathic medicine, even in infectious illnesses, doesn't treat the cause.
Now you wrote in your book, we are at this moment on the eve of a revolution in medical thought. Is this revolution treating the whole body, the total person?
Actually, it is the whole body, because degeneration occurs in every aspect of our being. We degenerate in the brain, in the liver, in the heart, the kidneys, all over. And out of this comes a degenerated spirit and thinking, and ultimately even a sociology, which we can go into a little later if you'd like. Now, there is a revolution in this work. I feel that this is the beginning of what's to come in the next the next half decade or decade.
Do you see orthodox, entrenched, allopathic medicine fighting this?
Most of them aren't even too much aware of it, actually. And those that are fighting it tooth and nail.
Why?
Yes. Because they, some of them may honestly not believe it, you know, like anything striking, people don't believe. Like when the Wright brothers were flying their plane, I'm sure there are people who doubted it was done, even though it was done.
Well, so many people throughout history who are the forerunners of something new are ridiculed. I quoted last time, and I'll quote it again, William James, the father of American psychology and himself a physician, said that any new treatment there are 3 stages encountered by any new treatment. 1, entrenched orthodoxy calls it quackery and non-existent. Then it is admitted to exist, but is written off as unimportant or useless. Finally, its foes exultantly exclaim, "We helped discover it." Now,
that last is so true. I know.
You're laughing. Why? Are you beginning to see that in nucleic acid therapy?
Yes, there are always going to be people. I can predict that as something that's definitely going to happen. Orthodox medicine is taking over many of the things even that the other people, for example, Rodale, you know, who writes Prevention magazine. Well, he's now dead. His son is running it, but Mr. Rodale had a lot of ideas, and these ideas are being taken over right now by orthodox medicine. The poor guy's not even getting credit for it. You know, it's really an outrage. And they denounced him as a quack and this and that in his time.
He was ridiculed throughout his life.
Look at Cooley. Cooley's Toxins against cancer. That's a darn good area to talk about this in this respect. This man, you know, spoke of, you know, he saw that certain things like certain diseases, skin diseases with bacteria. Sometimes cancer patients who had these diseases, say the skin or other parts of the body, the bacteria would stimulate the immune system, this is what we know now, and knock out the cancer, and the cancer disappeared. So what he did was make material that would have from these bacteria and so on, and heal cancer patients. And he's been denounced for God, I think, for half a century, this man. Cooley's Toxins, or more than I don't remember the exact time he lived. It was
Did he die before he was ever accepted?
Oh, yes, poor guy's long since dead. And I remember Morris Fishbein wrote an editorial. He used to be the head of the AMA, in which Cooley was denounced. And the whole thing was sheer rubbish, because this man's ideas are now on the forefront of immunology, which is, of course, very prominent in cancer work.
In cancer work, right. This is true in art, in music, in literature, I guess every field. Why? Why vested interests, money?
It's vested interest and money in part, but I think it's a bit more than that. I think these people have a vested interest in their own egos, and they just can't stomach somebody else coming in from a peripheral area whom they didn't suspect was there and taking over what they should have done before themselves, and they couldn't do it. They just didn't have the imagination.
Their egos won't allow them to say, this is wonderful, I can incorporate and use this and expand myself.
That's the idea. They just can't do that. They can't admit failure either. There's just too much ego for that.
I want to get right back to this. I want to mention, though, in your book, Dr. Frank's No Aging Diet, you treat using nucleic acids.
Yes, nucleic acids are the key
And you do
thing.
give a list of foods high in nucleic acids, which can build body resistance and slowly reverse aging effects.
Definitely.
And you also do practice here in New York. What interest has the medical establishment shown in your work?
Actually, I get calls from all over the country. I do have patients, I might add, from all over the country that are sometimes sent by other doctors and also by other patients. And doctors in various sections of the country are now starting to work with nucleic acids.
They are?
Yes.
Again, independently and not part of any specific program?
No, independently in the sense of the AMA and independently of that. You see, I have really pioneered this whole area, and I've done it for the last 2 decades. And I was written up in various magazines that some of the doctors do read. One of them being Prevention, another Let's Live, where I have a current article on why vitamins work or fail. You know, this type of topic. And
doctors do read those magazines.
They do indeed.
I'm surprised they do admit it.
Well, I used to have a professor, believe it or not. He was one of the best doctors in Europe. His name was Bickel, and I know he used to go to a chiropractor. And yet the doctors always denounce, and he didn't denounce chiropractors, but most doctors do. And it's real nonsense because they really do some good.
But has a medical establishment, say a major hospital or a major organization, come to you and shown interest in your work, a group of doctors, or is it more independently that they've come?
No, this is for the most part independent, yes. All of these are independent people who've come upon my work in various ways and who come and call me up. And I will advise them, and do advise them over the phone, on how to treat their patients. Often they'll have a case. I'm treating a man out in California now with a very terrible neurologic disease, and I haven't seen the man personally. And he's dying of this disease, and I was fortunately able to stop it pretty much with nucleic acid therapy, as other neurologic diseases do respond to this therapy. And I haven't seen this man, and he was referred here by a doctor, and I'm in touch with his doctor in California, so I do this.
You do it.
Yeah.
Now you do independent research too, don't you?
Now that's most of what I do. Actually, I practice only part of the week, and the independent research is done most of the time either by way of reading and thinking, you know, planning, ideas and approaches to problems, and actually doing work. Most of my work is in cancer and aging, as far as animal work goes. Cancer, I don't treat people because I'm still in the mice phase. But I have approaches to that seem
what have you researched in mice with cancer?
Well, it's a very different approach from what is being done. It's not
the burn and poison approach?
No, it's a different kind of a thing. It has to do much more so with nutrition and things like that. Though it is it's a biochemical approach. In other words, by making the metabolism of the body and the cancer tissue more energy producing, I'm able to knock out the tumors in mice.
Your body itself knocks out the tumor because it's...
Well, that can happen too after a week or two. But
have you eliminated tumors in mice?
Yes, definitely.
Have you shown your work to other people?
Well,
say the big cancer institutions?
Well, one of them actually tested my formula in 1965, believe it or not. I wish I had the report with me. And all the tumors did get knocked out in the independent test that they did. But unfortunately, this large institute, which is in the middle of New York, didn't do anything about it. It's really an outrage, and I feel had they pursued this thing, it could have long since come to something very useful, and maybe a cure.
Why do you think they just ignored positive findings in research?
Well, when you're an outsider and you're in a large group, like we were saying before, they have the institutional ego and their own egos, and their vested interest financially, for all I know. I just don't really know.
Even when it's something like cancer?
Yeah, even when it's anything. It's ironic, but that's how it is.
Are there other people out there in the same boat? who have found approaches to curing cancer, which is certainly one of the major epidemics of our time.
I'm sure there are many other people. When I say many, I'm sure there must be at least a half dozen, maybe more, who've actually got effective approaches that would be effective were they carried out.
How do you feel knowing you have your hands on something that might, if developed, be able to cure certain cancers, or at least help in curing them, and having your work ignored?
Well, I just keep on doing the work and hope that one day maybe it'll be accepted.
How do you finance your work?
I do it actually through my own practice, and the money I earn there, almost all of it goes into research.
Into the research?
Yeah.
Could you do a lot more if you had outside funding?
Oh, I'm sure if I had let's say, a staff of a dozen people, I could do far more, but I don't have that kind of money. And I'll tell you something, Jane, I'm not so keen, though, on anything very large. In other words, a small place is good, and then for ideas don't come to large groups. They come really to a few people. And to develop ideas, you need a small group around you. That's fine.
That's very cohesive and interactive.
Yeah, that's the idea. And if you get into a large thing like NIH, you know, the National Institutes of Health, they haven't produced anything effective in years, except for an odd, rare disease every now and then. They may make a finding. But on the whole, with all the major diseases that we've had throughout our country, they haven't produced a bloody thing. And in terms of well, you take heart disease. It's a good subject in this respect. They've been working on this for decade after decade, and I don't know how long at NIH, and nothing has come up. There was recently a conference on cholesterol, and they're talking about high-density lipoproteins, low-density, all these things. And nobody's ever come up in a way to really do anything about this all. And they found that lowering cholesterol doesn't do it, raising it certainly doesn't do it. And they seem to say there's no dietary influence in these matters.
Oh, for goodness sake. You yourself have done work in heart disease,
yes, and I treat heart disease, and I also treat hypercholesterolemia, high cholesterol levels. And it may interest you that I have, and I discuss in this book, the nucleic acid nutrition and therapy in detail, that diets rich in nucleic acids, particularly sardines, believe it or not, which have, in addition to nucleic acids, they have certain other compounds that work with them. And they not only lower cholesterol, but they raise the high-density lipoprotein cholesterol, which is that type of thing in the blood that carries cholesterol from the arteries to the liver and out of the body, so to speak. And the low-density lipoprotein cholesterol is lowered. This is exactly what one would desire from all these heart disease studies that have come on recently. And the point is, the nucleic acid-rich diet, whether it's beans or lima beans, kidney beans, baked beans, or sardines, though I think sardines are the best, this type of diet definitely improves the cholesterol picture in the blood. And as far as clinically, it improves the clinical picture of heart disease immensely. If I give nucleic acid supplements to these people in heart failure, I have found, on the whole, a very great improvement in that.
And I'm sure that work has been ignored, too.
Well, yeah, they ignore everything, and they actually feed the public the idea that diet means nothing, that nutrition is nothing, that vitamins are nothing, that everything that we call nutrients are merely expensive urine if we take them in, and so on.
Goes right through you and does no good in the meantime.
Yeah, and these people, if you ask the average doctor, and those listening, I just ask them to do this as a favor to themselves, what is the nature of vitamin B1? What's its chemical structure? What does it do? What enzymes does it activate? How does it act in the cell? I'll bet you my bottom dollar that not one of them, maybe out of 100, if that many, will know about it. And the same applies to niacinamide and the other vitamins. They simply don't know their subject. And to pronounce themselves as against nutrition, not knowing a single thing really about basic nutrition, about the basic biochemistry of the vitamins and other nutrients, this type of thing is really awful.
Do you think we're going to ever come to what would be a medical Watergate? Do you think we're ever going to come to what would be a medical Watergate, where there will be an exposure of, say, sums of money supporting certain things and ignoring others for certain reasons that might not be completely wholesome?
Well, how do you mean, Jan? I didn't quite get the...
Well, it seems that there's one fringe of medicine which is holistic. It's a fringe right now. Then there's the medical establishment, and that seems to be mixed up with drug companies, and there seems to be a revolving circle. And with the FDA, where no one's let in or out, and the same people keep going around and around. It's the revolving door syndrome. And it seems to the outsider to look as if money must be involved somewhere. And I wonder if someday there won't be an exposure, or more and more people are losing confidence in their doctors because they sense this.
Well, the doctors, unfortunately, can't do much about things. If someone comes in with arthritis, they can give him aspirin, and if he's got a worse case, they'll give him even a cortisone derivative like prednisone or butazolidine, which
destroy the bone marrow.
Yeah, destroy the bone marrow and things like that. If they have, headaches, instead of getting at the cause, they'll give them again Fiorinal or some other headache pill, or codeine or whatever. They really are unable to fight the rising tide of degenerative disease, and what really boils me and boils a lot of people in nutrition.
Is that they're unwilling to even look for
anything or admit that they can't do anything. And if you read the medical journals, they have these snotty little articles that talk about the most minute little aspects of things, and about more and more, about less and less. And actually, they don't discuss the major problem at all because they can't find the solution. They don't know what it is.
You see, I think a lot of people sense this, and I think they're losing faith in their doctors.
Well, they should.
More and more people are trying to go on their own. They're desperate to find someone. They go through doctor after doctor, and they finally end up trying to treat themselves through nutrition or vitamin therapy or whatever, just in a haphazard manner, because of course they don't know quite what they're doing, but because they've come to the end of the rope.
Jane, I just want to say something, though, in defense of the doctor, even though I don't always agree with them. They have not a point in what they're doing, but I would say this, though. It's not really, I don't think, only the doctor that's at fault. He may not even be much of a culprit at all.
He's a victim, perhaps.
He's a victim just as much as the patient, ironically. And the people who feed him information are the drug companies, of course. We know that's commercial. But the drug companies themselves are biased in the wrong direction in their research. Then we have the scientists who work with drug companies and also work apart from them in the universities in what they like to call pure research. All these scientists seem to come up with no answer to these problems. And the pure research never reaches any kind of a practical solution to these problems.
But the doctor's a culprit to the extent that he is often unwilling to look at new solutions.
Well, he's unwilling in the sense because he's been brainwashed, you see, by the drug companies and by the scientists and by peer group pressure. In other words, a doctor that goes on and starts to give nutrition, he'll be
kicked right out of the hospital.
Oh, he'd be kicked out of the hospital in most cases. They'd say he's practicing quackery. And the ironical thing is that the doctors who kick him out don't even know what a vitamin is on a chemical level.
I know it.
For example, they don't know, if you ask them, what does vitamin, like I referred to before, what does vitamin B1 do? What enzymes does it work with? They haven't a bloody idea what even an enzyme is.
No.
So how can they talk about nutrition?
It's just terrible. I'm glad you're around anyway. We have about 2 minutes. What is happening, we were going to discuss briefly your thoughts on what is happening with our country and why it's failing, or is it, if it is failing, why it is.
Well, I tell you, I have an answer to that which is a little different from the other answers, which are mostly economic and political. I feel that what is happening to our country and much of our world has to do with nutrition, and that bad nutrition is a very major factor in the cause of decay in our society today, the cause of the rise of disease and all these things. I spoke before about nucleic acids. What they do is energize the cell. This is sort of a common thing in nutrition that is very, very anti-degenerative disease, anti-aging, and promoting of health. Now, there are other factors, for example, pollutants and chemicals and things like that, that most of us are at least generally aware of. This combination of things, what it does in reality is cut down on energy metabolism in our cells. And when the brain has less energy and the organs have less energy, they get sick. The brain has less energy, it tends to think less well. People get sicker, weaker, and, you know, moribund, and all this sort of thing. So what happens is a society of people who are not healthy, who are no longer vital, who no longer want to find out things for themselves, to do things for themselves.
Who are just mentally inert,
mentally inert, decrepit, and
would rather go down the drain than fight.
Yeah, and the people on relief are really victims of bad nutrition, I think. Most of them are. And we're blaming the people on relief. It's not the relief per se. It's the fact that these people are fed this horrible pap and stuff that comes out from these food companies recommended by doctors who know nothing about nutrition. And these people are sick, and our country is getting sick from this all.
I agree with you. Our time is up. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much, Jane.
Come back again if you would.
Thank you.
We've been talking to Dr. Benjamin Frank. I'm sure you'll agree with me. He's exceptional. I'm Jessie Gray. The program is Personalities.